The avoidant person exists in an impossible psychological state where they simultaneously love you deeply and fear you intensely, where the same qualities that make them love you are the exact qualities that terrify them, where their feelings for you create the very panic that makes them push you away, where loving you and fearing you aren't separate experiences, but are completely intertwined so that they cannot feel one without feeling the other. And this simultaneous love and fear creates the maddening, contradictory behavior you witness, where they pull you close, then push you away, where they express deep feelings, then withdraw emotionally, where they make future plans, then panic about commitment, where they show you they care, then act like they don't, where every step towards you triggers equal step away from you, because proximity increases both their love and their terror in equal measure. Understanding that they love you and fear you simultaneously, that these aren't sequential states, but are concurrent experiences happening at the same time, helps make sense of behavior that otherwise seems insane or cruel. They're not playing games with you. They're not confused about their feelings. They're not unsure whether they want you. They know they love you. And that's precisely why they're terrified, because in their psychological world, love equals danger. Caring deeply equals vulnerability to catastrophic pain. Letting someone matter equals handing them weapon to destroy you. Allowing themselves to need someone equals setting up scenario where they'll be abandoned and devastated. The more they love you, the more afraid they become. The deeper their feelings, the stronger their urge to run. The more you matter to them, the more dangerous you feel to their survival. This isn't rational. They know intellectually you're safe, know you haven't hurt them, know their fear is disproportionate to actual threat. But trauma doesn't live in rational mind. It lives in nervous system and in body and in automatic responses that bypass logic entirely. And their nervous system learned through early experiences that loving someone deeply leads to being hurt, that depending on someone leads to being abandoned, that vulnerability leads to rejection, and no amount of intellectual recognition that you're different from the people who hurt them can override the visceral body-level terror that loving you triggers, because their system is responding to past pain rather than to present reality. You're caught in an impossible situation where the better you are to them, the more they love you, and therefore the more they fear you. Your kindness triggers their terror of depending on kindness that might disappear. Your consistency triggers their expectation that consistency will eventually break. Your love triggers their certainty that love will turn to abandonment. Your acceptance triggers their belief that once you really know them, you'll reject them like they believe everyone eventually does. The specific ways they love you that look nothing like traditional love. The avoidant person's love for you manifests in ways that don't match conventional expressions of love, making it easy to miss or misinterpret their feelings as disinterest when they're actually expressing love through their particular wounded lens. Understanding how they love reveals feelings that exist beneath defensive behavior. They love you through the space they give you, through not being clingy or demanding, believing that respecting your independence is the highest form of care they can offer. The avoidant demonstrates love by not overwhelming you, not demanding your time, not making you feel obligated or trapped. In their mind, giving you complete freedom is expression of profound love, because freedom is what they value most. So offering it to you feels like offering you the most precious thing they possess. They believe they're loving you by not being burdened, by not requiring too much, by allowing you to live your life without feeling controlled by relationship demands. This looks like distance or disinterest to you, but to them it's sacrifice. They're suppressing their desire to be close to you, to give you what they believe you need, which is space and independence. They think, I love you so much, I won't trap you, while you think they don't care enough to want to be close. The gap between how they're expressing love and how you recognize love creates perception. They don't love you when actually they're expressing it in the only way their wounds allow. They love you by showing up during crisis, even when they've been distant during calm periods, revealing that they care most when stakes are highest, even if daily affection is scarce. Watch what happens when you have genuine emergency, real crisis, serious problem. Suddenly, the distant avoidant appears, is present, is helpful, is there when it really matters. This pattern reveals their love. When things are calm and affection is about emotional intimacy rather than practical help, they struggle and withdraw. But when you truly need them, when situation is serious enough that helping is concrete action rather than emotional vulnerability, they show up. They'll drive across town at midnight to help you with actual problem. They'll be rock during your crisis. They'll demonstrate through action that you matter to them. Then when crisis passes and you need emotional closeness rather than practical help, they disappear again. This isn't lack of love. It's that they can express love through action during crisis, but cannot express it through emotional intimacy during calm. The showing up when stakes are high reveals they care deeply. The withdrawing when intimacy is required reveals their fear. They love you through remembering small details about you and surprising you with things that show. They pay attention even when they seem emotionally distant. The avoidant who seems disconnected will suddenly reference something you mentioned weeks ago, will surprise you with your favorite food. You mentioned once in passing, will remember your important meeting and ask about it. Will notice when you change something about your appearance, will bring you thing related to interest you mentioned casually. These moments reveal they're paying attention constantly, even when they seem checked out. They're thinking about you, even when they're withdrawn. They're holding you in their mind, even when they're not expressing feelings. The attention to detail, the remembering, the thoughtful gestures based on things you barely remember telling them. These are how they show love when they cannot show it through words or through consistent presence. They're saying, I see you, I think about you, you matter to me, through actions and through memory, when they cannot say it, through emotional availability. They love you by trying to solve your problems and offer practical help rather than emotional support, expressing care through doing rather than through feeling with you. When you share a problem or struggle, the avoidant immediately starts problem solving, offering solutions, suggesting fixes, trying to help you resolve the issue practically. This feels dismissive when what you want is empathy and emotional support, when you want them to just listen and understand rather than fix. But their problem solving is how they love. They cannot sit with your emotions because emotions overwhelm them, but they can help you solve the problem because that's concrete action they can take. They're trying to show they care by making your life better in tangible ways when they cannot show they care by providing emotional comfort. Let me fix this for you is there, I love you, and I hate that you're struggling. The practical help is expression of care, even though it misses the emotional support you actually need. They love you by sharing parts of their life they don't share with others, letting you into their world in small ways that are significant to them, even if they seem minor to you. The avoidant tells you about their day when they usually tell no one. They introduce you to their hobby when they typically keep it private. They share observation or thought they normally keep to themselves. They let you into their space when they usually maintain strict privacy. These small sharings feel insufficient to you. You want deep emotional revelations, vulnerable disclosures, intimate conversations. But for them, sharing anything is significant because they typically share nothing. They're showing you they love you by letting you see parts of themselves they hide from everyone else, by including you in their private world, by allowing you proximity to their real self when they usually maintain distance from everyone. The fact that you get any access when others get none reveals you're special, reveals you matter, reveals they love you enough to risk the vulnerability of being partially known, even though they cannot risk the greater vulnerability you're asking for. They love you through consistency in their own way, not emotional consistency, but showing up as themselves repeatedly, being reliably who they are even when disappointing. The avoidant isn't emotionally consistent. They're hot, then cold, close, then distant, available, then withdrawn. But they're consistent in being themselves. They show up as the same defended person repeatedly. They're reliably avoidant in predictable ways. They're consistently themselves, even when that self is inconsistently available. This consistency of character, even when behavior is inconsistent, is their version of reliability. They're not pretending to be different people, not lying about who they are, not changing personalities to manipulate. They're showing you who they actually are, defended, scared, struggling, and they keep showing you that truth, even when they know it disappoints you. This authentic consistency, this reliable truth about who they are, even when that truth is difficult, is how they love, by not deceiving you, by not pretending to be someone they're not, by showing you real them, even when real them is insufficient for healthy relationship. They love you by thinking about you constantly, even when they're not contacting you, holding you in their mind during absence in ways you cannot see. The avoidant goes days without texting, seems to forget you exist, appears to have moved on during their withdrawals, but internally, they're thinking about you almost constantly, wondering what you're doing, remembering things about you, having imaginary conversations with you, missing you while simultaneously needing distance from you. You have no way to know about this internal reality because they don't express it, but their mind is full of you, even when their behavior suggests you're absent from their thoughts. They're loving you through constant mental presence, even while creating physical and communicative absence, existing in state where you're always on their mind, but they cannot reach out because reaching out would increase closeness that's already overwhelming them. The private, internal devotion that you cannot witness is real, even though it's invisible to you. They love you by staying when their instinct is to run, by continuing to try despite terror, by not ending relationship even though fear screams at them to escape. The fact that they haven't left despite being terrified is itself expression of love. Their every instinct is telling them to run. Their fear is overwhelming. Their wounds are screaming danger, yet they're still here, still trying, still showing up in their limited way. For avoidant whose primary response to fear is flight, staying despite fear reveals they care more than they can express. Every day they don't run, every time they return after withdrawal, instead of disappearing permanently, every moment they continue trying despite wanting to flee. These are demonstrations of love more significant than words or grand gestures, because they're choosing you over their strongest instinct for self-protection. The staying is the love, even when the staying is inconsistent and painful, because staying at all when terror tells them to leave reveals you matter enough that they're fighting their own survival instinct to remain in your orbit. Why loving you terrifies them more than losing you does. The paradox at the heart of the avoidance experience is that loving you creates more terror than losing you does, making their fear of intimacy stronger than their fear of loss. Understanding why love itself is the threat reveals the impossible bind they're trapped in. Loving you terrifies them because it means you have power to hurt them in ways no one else can, making you the most dangerous person in their life. The depth of their feelings for you creates proportional vulnerability to pain. The more they love you, the more losing you would hurt, the more your rejection would devastate them, the more your abandonment would destroy them. This vulnerability to potential pain terrifies them more than actual loss, because their trauma has taught them pain is inevitable, that everyone eventually leaves or hurts you, that vulnerability always leads to devastation. In their calculation, losing you while not loving you deeply would be manageable pain. Losing you while loving you deeply would be unbearable, catastrophic pain that might break them entirely. So loving you feels more dangerous than losing you. Losing you is a finite event they believe they could survive, but allowing themselves to love you deeply means creating vulnerability to pain so severe they don't believe they could survive it. The love itself is the threat because it creates the vulnerability. So preventing deep love feels like survival strategy, even though it guarantees they'll lose you. Loving you terrifies them because it means admitting they need someone, destroying the self-sufficient identity they've built their entire sense of safety around. The avoidant has constructed identity as independent person who doesn't need anyone, who's complete alone, who can handle everything themselves. This identity provides psychological safety. If you don't need anyone, no one can hurt you by leaving or withholding. Loving you threatens this identity because love reveals need. They need your presence, your attention, your care. Admitting this need feels like dismantling the protective identity that's kept them safe, feels like becoming vulnerable, dependent person they've spent life avoiding becoming. Feels like losing themselves by acknowledging they're not actually self-sufficient, but actually need you. This identity threat terrifies them more than losing you, because losing you is external event, but needing you is internal transformation that changes who they are. They can survive losing person, but they fear they cannot survive becoming person who needs, because needing is the vulnerability they've organized their entire life to prevent. Loving you terrifies them because it activates their abandonment wound in ways casual connection never does, making them constantly anticipate the loss they believe is inevitable. When they didn't love you deeply, potential loss was manageable threat. But now that they love you, their abandonment wound is fully activated. They're certain you'll leave because everyone leaves, certain you'll abandon them like they were abandoned before, certain that allowing themselves to love you is simply setting up the devastating abandonment they know is coming. This anticipatory grief, this constant expectation of impending loss, is more terrifying than actual loss would be because it's constant presence. Losing you would be acute pain they'd eventually process. But loving you while expecting abandonment is chronic torture of waiting for pain they believe is inevitable. The anticipation is worse than the event. They'd almost prefer to lose you now and get the pain over with, rather than living in constant terror of when you'll leave. Love amplifies their abandonment wound until the fear of future abandonment overwhelms everything else. Loving you terrifies them because past experiences taught them love precedes pain, making your love feel like countdown to inevitable hurt. Their history has conditioned them. Every time they loved someone, pain followed. Every time they were vulnerable, they were hurt. Every time they let someone close, they were rejected or abandoned. Their nervous system learned that love is danger signal, that intimacy predicts pain, that vulnerability leads to trauma. Now they love you, and their system is screaming warnings. Danger, pain is coming. This love will hurt you, like love always hurts you. They cannot override these warnings, even though you haven't hurt them, even though you're different from past people, because the warnings aren't rational thought, but are conditioned fear response. Loving you feels like walking towards certain pain, like touching hot stove they know will burn them, like choosing devastation they could avoid by not loving deeply. The terror of anticipated pain based on past patterns is stronger than their ability to believe present could be different from past. Loving you terrifies them because it means the good they're experiencing with you will end, and the ending will hurt worse the better things are now. The avoidant cannot enjoy good moments with you because good moments trigger fear about their ending. The happier they are with you now, the more devastating it will be when this happiness ends, which they're certain it will. Every good experience, every moment of closeness, every time they feel happy with you, actually increases their fear because it's raising the stakes of eventual loss. They're thinking, this is so good, which means losing, this will destroy me, which means I need to protect myself before I get more invested, and the loss becomes even more catastrophic. The better things are, the more terrified they become, because quality of present relationship directly correlates with severity of pain they anticipate experiencing when it ends. They'd almost prefer things to be mediocre, because mediocre would hurt less to lose. The goodness itself becomes source of terror. Loving you terrifies them because vulnerability required to sustain love feels like standing emotionally naked with no defenses if you choose to hurt them. Love requires ongoing vulnerability, sharing feelings, expressing needs, being honest about fears, asking for what they want, revealing who they really are. Each vulnerability is risk. Sustaining love means sustaining this vulnerable state indefinitely, remaining emotionally exposed forever, never being able to restore full defenses because love requires openness. This permanent vulnerability state terrifies them more than loss because it's ongoing exposure to potential hurt with no protection. If you choose to hurt them while they're this vulnerable, they're completely defenseless. The sustained, undefended state that love requires feels more dangerous than being alone where they can restore defenses. Being alone is safe in its defended isolation. Being in love is terrifying in its required ongoing vulnerability. Loving you terrifies them because it means choosing you over their safety mechanisms that have protected them their entire life. The avoidance defenses, withdrawal, emotional distance, independence, avoidance of intimacy, have been their protection system for years or decades. These defenses kept them safe from being hurt, from being abandoned, from being overwhelmed. But loving you requires lowering these defenses, requires choosing intimacy over safety, requires prioritizing connection over protection. This choice, you or their safety mechanisms, terrifies them because their safety mechanisms are reliable protection while you are uncertain risk. They know their defenses work. They don't know if loving you is safe. Choosing you means abandoning the protection they trust for the connection they fear, means betting their well-being on you instead of on themselves, means giving up certain safety for uncertain love. This gamble feels more terrifying than losing you because losing you is one loss, but choosing you over their defenses feels like dismantling their entire protection system and leaving themselves vulnerable to every pain they've protected themselves from their entire life. Loving you terrifies them because they believe they'll eventually destroy the relationship through their patterns, and the self-hatred from that destruction will be unbearable. The avoidant is aware of their patterns, knows they push people away, recognizes they're difficult to be with. They love you and simultaneously believe they'll destroy this love through their own dysfunction. They'll withdraw when you need them. They'll be cold when you need warmth. They'll pull away when you need closeness. They'll eventually do what they always do, which is sabotage good thing through their fear-driven patterns. This anticipated self-sabotage terrifies them because it means they'll lose you, and it will be their fault, which creates unbearable self-hatred. Losing you to external circumstance would be painful. Losing you because they destroyed relationship through their own patterns would be pain plus intense self-recrimination. They're terrified of loving you because they believe they're incapable of sustaining that love without destroying it, which means loving you is choosing both loss and self-hatred. The terror is not just of losing you, but of being the cause of that loss, of proving to themselves they're as broken as they fear they are. How fear and love exist simultaneously, creating the push-pull that tortures you both. The avoidant experiences love and fear, not as separate states, but as intertwined, simultaneous feelings that create constant internal conflict, manifesting as the push-pull behavior that tortures both of you. Understanding this simultaneity reveals the mechanism behind their contradictory actions. The push-pull happens because moments of deep love trigger immediate fear responses, creating a cycle where closeness and distance alternate rapidly. They feel love in moment of connection with you, holding hands, sharing laugh, having good conversation, and the love feels good briefly, but then immediately triggers fear. I love this person too much. I'm too vulnerable. I need to create distance to feel safe again. Within hours or even minutes of feeling close, fear activates and they pull away. Then during distance, the fear calms, but they miss you. Remember why they love you, feel the pull of connection, and they move toward you again. This creates rapid cycling where they can't sustain either state. Can't stay close because fear overwhelms them. Can't stay distant because love pulls them back. Each movement toward you triggers eventual movement away, and each movement away eventually triggers movement back toward you. You experience this as maddening inconsistency, but for them, it's being controlled by two equally strong forces that won't allow them to settle in either position. The simultaneous love and fear create internal battle, where part of them wants to commit fully, while another part is planning escape routes. They're having conversation about future with you, while mentally calculating how they'd leave if they needed to. They're feeling deeply in love, while simultaneously keeping emotional exit strategy available. They're considering moving in together, while maintaining an apartment they could retreat to. This internal split, commitment and escape coexisting, creates the contradictions you witness, where they make plans, then cancel them, express deep feelings, then withdraw them, move toward future, then backtrack. It's not that they're lying when they express commitment or when they express need for distance. Both are true simultaneously. They genuinely want future with you, and they genuinely need to know they can escape if it becomes too much. The split between these truths creates behavior that seems dishonest, when actually it's authentic expression of internal state, where contradictory needs coexist. The torture of simultaneity is that loving you doesn't eliminate their fear, and managing their fear doesn't eliminate their love, leaving them trapped between impossible options. If love eliminated fear, they could just love you, and fear would dissolve. If managing fear eliminated love, they could create distance and stop caring. But neither works. They love you while terrified, and they're terrified while loving. Distance doesn't make them love you less. It just makes them miss you while still being afraid. Closeness doesn't make them fear you less. It just intensifies both the love and the fear simultaneously. They're trapped in state where neither moving toward you nor moving away from you resolves their internal conflict. Toward amplifies both love and fear. Away maintains both love and fear. There's no position that eliminates the tension, no distance that feels right, no closeness that feels safe. They're tortured by internal contradiction that no external action resolves. The push-pull intensifies because your reactions to their withdrawal often trigger their love, while your acceptance triggers their fear, creating impossible dynamic. When they withdraw, and you pursue with obvious hurt or need. Paradoxically, this sometimes triggers their protective instinct and reminds them why they love you. You're a vulnerable person they care about who they're hurting, which activates their desire to comfort and reconnect. But when they return and you accept them calmly with healthy boundaries, this triggers their fear. You're strong and independent, which means you don't need them desperately, which means you could leave, which reactivates abandonment fear and makes them want to create distance again. Your hurt during their withdrawal triggers their love. Your strength during their return triggers their fear. You cannot win because both responses, being hurt by their withdrawal and being strong despite their patterns, trigger aspects of their internal conflict. The dynamic is rigged against stability because any response you give feeds either their love or their fear, keeping the cycle active. The simultaneous feelings create situation where they hurt you most when they love you most, making their worst behavior evidence of their strongest feelings. When they love you casually, they can manage their fear and be relatively consistent. But when they love you deeply, their fear spikes proportionally, and they withdraw drastically, become very cold, create maximum distance. This means their worst treatment of you, the coldest withdrawals, the most hurtful distancing, the cruelest seeming behavior, often happens when they love you most intensely, because intense love triggers intense fear, triggers intense defense. You interpret their worst behavior as evidence they don't care, when actually it's often evidence they care too much, and their system is in maximum panic, trying to protect them from the vulnerability their deep love creates. The correlation between the intensity of their feelings and the severity of their defensive behavior creates tragic dynamic, where their love makes them hurt you most. The push-pull creates confusion about whether they're fighting for you or fighting against you, when actually they're fighting against themselves. It looks like they're ambivalent about you, like they can't decide if they want relationship, like they're weighing pros and cons of being with you. But the battle isn't about you. It's internal battle between their desire for love and their terror of vulnerability, between their need for connection and their need for safety, between who they want to be, person capable of love, and who they fear they are, person too damaged for intimacy. You're caught in the middle of their internal war, where you're simultaneously the prize they're fighting for and the threat they're fighting against, which makes every interaction confusing, because you don't know if in this moment you represent what they want or what they fear. The battle is with themselves, but you experience the casualties. The love-fear coexistence means grand gestures and deep withdrawals can happen in same week, creating emotional whiplash that makes relationship feel unstable. Tuesday, they're planning future with you, expressing deep feelings, being emotionally present. Friday, they're cold, withdrawn, acting like you barely know each other. This isn't calculated manipulation. It's that Tuesday, their love was stronger than their fear, and they expressed it authentically. And Friday, their fear became stronger than their love, and they defended against it authentically. Both states are real. Both expressions are genuine. The problem is, they cannot maintain either state, cannot build on Tuesday's intimacy, because Wednesday triggers fear, cannot sustain Friday's distance, because Saturday triggers loneliness. You're living through their internal fluctuations as if they're about you, when they're about their internal battle between equally strong forces that won't allow stable equilibrium. The simultaneity means they cannot give you consistent message because they don't have consistent internal experience, leaving you to interpret contradictions as your responsibility to decode. They tell you they love you and they need space. They express commitment and ask for freedom. They want future and need to take things slow. You try to interpret these contradictions. Which message is true? What do they really mean? What should I believe? But both messages are true. They do love you and need space. They do want commitment and need freedom. The contradictions aren't puzzle to solve, but are accurate expression of internal state where contradictory needs coexist. Trying to decode them assumes one message is true and one is defensive cover, but actually both are true simultaneously. Understanding this doesn't make the contradictions less painful, but it makes them less confusing. You're not failing to understand their real message because there is no singular real message, just contradictory truths coexisting in their experience. What their love-fear paradox means for whether the relationship can survive. The simultaneous existence of love and fear in the avoidant creates specific implications for the relationship's viability and for what would be required for it to survive. Understanding these implications reveals what's actually possible versus what's wishful thinking. Their love-fear paradox means relationship cannot survive on love alone. It requires them addressing fear through therapeutic work, regardless of how much they love you. You might hope that if they love you enough, love will overcome fear. Love will heal their wounds. Love will be sufficient to make relationship work. But the paradox proves this hope is false. They do love you intensely, and love hasn't eliminated fear, hasn't healed wounds, hasn't been sufficient. Love and fear coexist without love eliminating fear. This means love is necessary but not sufficient condition. For a relationship to survive, they must address the fear through professional help. Therapy that addresses attachment wounds, develops distress tolerance, builds capacity for vulnerability, processes past trauma. No amount of love you provide or they feel will eliminate the fear without this therapeutic work. If they won't seek help, if they won't address fear directly through professional intervention, relationship cannot survive, regardless of how much love exists, because fear will continue driving destructive patterns that love cannot override. The paradox means your decision cannot be based on their feelings for you, but must be based on their actual behavior and their willingness to address their patterns. Knowing they love you doesn't change whether relationship is healthy for you. Knowing they're terrified doesn't excuse their hurtful patterns. Understanding the paradox creates compassion for their struggle, but doesn't create obligation to accept treatment that damages you. Your decision about staying must be based on concrete factors. Are they acknowledging their patterns? Are they seeking help? Are they making sustained effort to change behavior? Is their treatment of you actually improving, or just cycling through same patterns? Do they take responsibility, or blame their fear as if fear absolves them? Their love for you is relevant only if it motivates them to address the fear that's destroying the relationship. If love exists but change doesn't, relationships still can't survive healthily. Their paradox means timeline for change must be realistic. Months to years of therapeutic work, not weeks of good intentions or promises about trying harder. Attachment wounds that create the fear don't heal quickly. The avoidant who's been defended for 20 or 30 years won't develop capacity for vulnerability in 6 weeks. If you're considering staying, you must be realistic about timeline. Real change requires minimum 6 months to a year of consistent therapy with demonstrated behavioral improvements over that time, not just intentions or brief periods of better behavior, followed by pattern repetition. Staying makes sense only if you can genuinely accept this timeline without resentment, only if you can maintain your own life and well-being during extended period of their growth work, only if you're seeing consistent evidence of effort and gradual improvement rather than waiting indefinitely for change that never comes. Relationship can potentially survive, but only on timeline measured in years, not weeks, and only if they're actively working throughout that time. The love-fear dynamic means you must maintain firm boundaries about treatment you'll accept regardless of understanding their internal struggle. Understanding why they hurt you doesn't mean accepting being hurt. Knowing they love you while fearing you doesn't mean tolerating hot-cold behavior indefinitely. Compassion for their paradox must coexist with protection of yourself. Boundaries might be, I understand you're scared, and I won't accept being ignored for days without communication. I know this is hard for you, and I need actual consistency, or I need to leave for my own well-being. I see you're in therapy working on this, and I need to see concrete behavioral improvements within 6 months, or I need to move on. The boundaries honor both their struggle and your worth, acknowledging their difficulty while refusing to sacrifice yourself to their inability to manage their fear appropriately. Their paradox means relationship survival depends on them wanting to change for themselves, not just to keep you. External motivation fails when fear spikes. If they're seeking therapy and addressing patterns primarily to keep you, their motivation will fail when fear becomes intense enough, when the work gets difficult enough, when maintaining relationship feels suffocating enough. External motivation, I don't want to lose them, crumbles under the weight of fear because fear feels like survival threat that overrides relationship goals. Real sustainable change requires internal motivation. I want to be a person capable of healthy love for myself. I want to heal for my own well-being. I want to address these wounds because I'm tired of how they limit my life. Internal motivation survives. Fear spikes because it's about them and their own life quality, not just about maintaining relationship. If their work is primarily to keep you, it won't sustain when terror peaks. You cannot be their primary motivation for change. They must want change for themselves, and relationship surviving becomes positive byproduct of their personal growth rather than primary goal driving the work. The paradox means you must accept that even with work, they may never be capable of intimacy level you need, requiring honest assessment of whether partial healing is sufficient. Even with therapy, even with years of work, the avoidant may improve significantly, but still not reach capacity for intimacy that fully healthy relationship requires. They might develop ability to be more consistent, but still need more space than you want. They might reduce hot-cold cycling, but still have periods of withdrawal. They might become more emotionally available, but still struggle with vulnerability you need. You must honestly assess, is partial improvement enough for me to be fulfilled in this relationship? Can I genuinely accept relationship that's better, but still more limited than ideal? Or do I need partner who has full capacity from the start, rather than partner who may reach partial capacity after years of work? Neither answer is wrong, but you must be honest with yourself about what you actually need versus what you're willing to settle for out of love, or hope, or investment. Their love-fear reality means relationship can potentially survive, but only with their active work, your firm boundaries, realistic timeline, and honest assessment of whether growth occurring is sufficient. Relationship survival requires all elements. They must actively work through therapy to address fear. You must maintain boundaries protecting your well-being. Both of you must accept realistic timeline of years, not months. Progress must be honestly evaluated. Is actual change occurring, or just cycling through same patterns with different explanations? The relationship surviving requires them becoming more capable, and you being honestly satisfied with capacity they develop. It's possible some avoidants do the work, do develop greater capacity, do become able to sustain healthier relationship, but it's not likely without all these elements in place, and it's not guaranteed even with them. Their love is real. Their fear is real. Whether love plus work overcomes fear enough to make relationship viable is a question that can only be answered through their sustained effort over time and your honest evaluation of whether the relationship that results from their effort actually meets your needs for intimacy, consistency, and partnership. The ultimate truth of their paradox is that they can love you intensely and still not be able to be with you healthily, meaning love alone doesn't determine relationship viability. This is the hardest truth to accept. They're not lying about loving you. They're not confused about their feelings. They're not playing games. They genuinely love you deeply, and they're genuinely incapable of sustaining healthy relationship with you unless they address the fear that coexists with that love. Love doesn't guarantee relationship survives. Love doesn't mean they can meet your needs. Love doesn't overcome fear without active work to heal the wounds creating the fear. You can be loved deeply by someone who still hurts you through their patterns. You can be the most important person to someone who still can't show up for you consistently. You can be genuinely cared for by someone whose fear prevents them from caring for you in ways you actually need. Their love is real and insufficient simultaneously. Your choice isn't whether to believe they love you. You can accept that they do. Your choice is whether love without capacity is enough for you, whether you'll wait while they develop capacity, whether you'll accept relationship where you're loved but not met in the ways healthy partnership requires. They love you and fear you. Both are true. Neither eliminates the other, and neither changes whether being with them actually serves your well-being and your future.